Bryan, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
It's already a great episode because the last one that I filmed, I totally forgot to plug in my microphone. So this is already a better one.
You're already starting on a good foot.
Yeah. So this is an absolute honor and a privilege to get to talk to you about something that I'm deeply passionate about, leadership. But if you could go ahead and just start to provide an overview to our listeners, who is Bryan Sisk?
Yeah, so I think I would first and foremost say I'm a Christian. That's been something that's really guided me through a lot of spots in my life that, I can only give credit to God in that space. But father, love my family. It's one of those things. I'll talk probably a little bit more about it here in a minute, but joined the Army at 17, and my wife's been with me for 35 years. And I'll tell you, that's it's one of the things I'm the most proud of. And then have to say veteran and advocate. I think those are the things that would probably describe me the most.
35 years of marriage is awesome, man. I think that's like a countercultural norm nowadays of the average lifespan of a marriage. And I look at kind of the lens of just my friends and family that I know. I've been married now for 12, 13 years. If Sophia ever listens to this, she'll probably get mad at me. But it's crazy because that's such a long time and it's flown by so quickly.
It
13
does.
years to me seems like just flip the switch, and I can't imagine 35 years. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It's I look back now and I retired from the Army in 2008, and it's
Well,
it's just one of those things that the years go by quickly, man. Enjoy them.
so I always love starting off right with this question, and I think it's unique because I have everyone from entrepreneurs to major business owners to veterans to active duty, and it's just defining leadership in your terms, and then how has that changed over the course of the years? So, like Bryan, just starting off in the Army, and then Bryan now, how has that matured?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, it's I don't know that I could put one thing on it. It's more of a concept for me because I really
Mm.
used to be enamored with the fastest, the most skilled, that person who is just racked and locked in all the time. And what I have found and really grown to appreciate is more about the potential of somebody. And
Mm.
so, really, finding somebody who can smile, who's dependable, who's hardworking, you really gets your back. I feel like we can invest in that individual, wrap the services around them that they need, and they're going to be successful. And that's the individual that's really going to take you where you need to go because we don't do anything in life independently, right? So you really got to surround yourself with individuals that have potential. Make sure that you align things that they need to make sure they can achieve what they need to achieve, and the world's right.
I love that, and I think that that's one of the best definitions. It's simple too, and that's why I follow the rule. Kind of keep it simple, stupid. The KISS rule, and I probably overuse that acronym all the time. But you're never going to achieve anything in life unless you surround yourself with people of high caliber, of quality reputation, that have a hard work ethic and are willing to push through the tough times. But investing in those, and that's what I love because that you just talked about, and I want to make sure we kind of hit on that. Is there's a concept of the Pareto principle, and the first time I ever heard that, if that a leader invests 20% and 20% of his workforce or her workforce, and those 20% of the individuals in the team can produce 80% of the results. And I never thought about that before, of that our time is so valuable, especially as a leader, as we continue to grow. And the more time that we can invest in those that have the best chances of meeting the most potential of themselves and within the organization, can create a ripple effect in the organization, that that individual is now a coach and a mentor for other people. So you're replicating yourself. And to me, that is a powerful lesson that I had to learn. So that is a beautiful definition. I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it really is a logarithmic relationship, right? Because
Yeah.
if you invest in somebody and then they invest in somebody before long, you have like influenced, a large number of people. Especially if you have the opportunity to really do that and to connect it with something you're passionate about. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, I'm not saying everybody has to go to work and love everything they do, right? But there's always an opportunity to find something every day that you're passionate about. And if you can find people and link them that way, sky's the limit.
Mm. So start off with, where did your leadership journey begin? Where do you think it started?
So, it's funny because I think I answer this question differently every time I'm asked it because it goes back a ways. But I can remember the first time that I thought, wow, somebody wants my advice on something, and I might be like stepping into this leadership realm.
Oh,
Was
wow.
when I was a retention NCO. And so here I am, an E5 on an extra duty type thing, talking to people about their careers and, having a conversation where they legitimately wanted like my opinion, because there's a lot of things you do where you just got to kind of check the block and touch base with individuals. But then you have some of these conversations like, wow, these individuals are like really care about what I'm thinking. I've got to step my game up because I want to be that
Mm.
person that's worthy of that, right? And it's just one of those things that has kind of snowballed throughout my career. Is I really do think that I've got to invest in myself so that way I can invest equally that amount into others. And I think those are really important things. I learned that really early. Had an amazing individual when I took that retention NCO, because you tend to spend more time with your company commander in that
Yeah.
job. So yeah, that's probably when that was, and that's goodness, that's probably 30 plus years ago at this point. So
Wow.
it's been a bit.
So a retention NCO, for anyone who's listening, could you kind of just quickly define the importance of that role within like a battalion or a brigade?
Oh yeah, so I didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest with you. It's one
Yeah.
of those things, they tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're going to be a retention. It's like when they told me that I was going to be the unit movement officer or the UMO. I was like, oh, that sounds fun, until I figured out what it involved. It's like, it's not fun.
It's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the individual. So at the time, anybody who was coming into their window where they could get out of the military, it's really sitting down with them, making sure they understood the benefits of staying in,
Mm.
having some conversations about, if you wanted to change jobs, what were those options, what jobs were open, and could, you kind of match them with the opportunities they were looking for.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know a lot of the times that maybe someone doesn't have a military background. I'm trying to get better at that when I say an acronym or something pops up that's just not common, to kind of define that, so understand
Yeah.
what we're talking about. So what drove you to being in the healthcare profession? What drove you to want to join the Army and serve in that capacity before working for nonprofit and for-profit companies?
Yeah, so probably not the most inspiring story, to be honest with you. So I grew up in construction. My dad owned an
Mm.
electrical contracting company. I could probably wire a house independently by the age of 14.
Oh, wow.
Spent a lot of time on the job with my dad. And one day my dad took me aside and he said, "Hey, I don't want you working with your hands your whole life. You've got to go
Mm.
find something that you can do that is not working with your hands." And that was a little bit foreign to me, right? I mean, my whole family was in construction. It's good living, right? I mean, love that. Love my group, my family. They do great things. But I didn't really know what to think of that, to be honest with you,
Mm.
because I didn't want to go to college. Didn't know what I wanted to do. And so took the ASVAB at school, scored well, had a recruiter call me up one night and said, "Hey, you want to be a Russian linguist?" I
Oh,
said,
wow.
"Sure, let's do that." Told my dad, "Hey, listen to your advice. I'm going to join the Army and be a Russian linguist. Oh, and I'm getting married here. And since I'm 17, can you sign the paperwork so I can join?"
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I can imagine now one of my kids coming to me saying that. How at that time I didn't appreciate that discussion, but I certainly do now. But so that did not go well. Um, I am told that I have this Southern accent. Um, but there was just some syllables that I couldn't get past the oral part, because every Friday you tested, on your
Mm.
module that you learned. And so it came to the point where they offered me 2 jobs or to get out. One was an electrician. So imagine that. I scored high in that in the ASVAB. The other was computer programming. And back then, not everybody had a computer. I don't even know that. I mean, I'd seen a few computers, and so I'm like, I'll do that. But what that taught me is I was going to go into another job and I was not going to fail my wife or my family. And I was going to go into this thing and be the hardest worker there. And I needed to be, because when I got there, total fish out of water. And I struggled, but I stayed late in the pit, early to the pit, and did everything I could to make sure that I was doing the right thing. And I tell individuals quite often, I failed so much that the NCOs that were there, I mean, I was working so hard. They were really pulling with me. I mean, in your advanced training, that's not always the case, right? But really developed this support network. And when it came time to graduate, the part of graduation was you had this about a half a day test that you had to go through. And I did it in about 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Because I had seen everything in every error that could be done. I had done them like 15 times. So I was just able to go through in one shot and fix top to bottom the whole script and walk out of there. And it happened so fast. The NCO at the time took me aside and he said, well, hey, we're going to have to check this. This is wrong. four or five of them got together and sure enough, they're like, you're good. And so what it taught me is it's worth it. The energy that you put into it, it's hard. It's not fair. Pick a word. Doesn't matter. It's worth it. And I've really carried that throughout. I mean, it's been one of those things that I'm always striving to be the hardest worker in the room.
I love that story, and in kind of a similar same vein. And I think we probably come up from similar backgrounds. I don't know if my twang sticks out or not, but I'm from rural West Virginia. I try really hard to not let the twang take over. But if you hear my dad be like, yep, I know exactly where you're from.
Exactly.
But I remember vividly going to college and not having any scholarships, not knowing that I needed to take any tests, the ACT. I just found a way to do it. And when I was at college, there was called the Oasis payments. It was basically an installment for the first semester to go there. And then I found creative ways to pay for school, like an RA, join the National Guard. But that first semester, I'll never forget. And my dad just went through a divorce at this time of how am I going to pay for the school? And I called dad, like, Dad, we owe Marshall University $4,000 in the next 2 weeks or my college career's over. And he, coal miner, hardly any savings. He found a way to pay for my school. And at that moment in time, school was always just a luxury to me at that point until that moment happened. And then he told me, son, is like, hey, I'm investing in you. Don't waste it. And every single day I would always focus, do the tests, do the best that I could, study for them, not go out with my friends and drink. I was focused on getting the best possible grades that I could. And it was from the lenses that I had something more important than having, fun with my friends, that there was a future that I was working towards and people were investing in me. So I need to be unreasonable. And there's a quote by Winston Churchill that kind of sums up your story beautifully. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And as you continue to work through those failures, you found what you were passionate about. And that's the beauty about leadership. Whatever you choose, whatever your profession is, you're going to fail and you're going to stumble several times. Trust me. If you would have saw me in Ranger School, you'd be like, who is this dude? So,
well, and that's the thing is, as we continue through my career, obviously I didn't end up as a computer programmer because I'm a nurse. There was a point that I've really taken for granted up until just really a few years ago. I didn't want to go to college. I think I said that earlier, right? It's like going to figure this thing out. I thought, hey, being in computers, that'd be a good job. And that's kind of what I'll do. Um, and I had a company commander in one of my first units take me and about 4 other guys out. And he's like, hey, guys, here's a paint roller, little 3-inch paint roller, bucket of paint, broom, and it's 100 degrees in August in San Antonio. I
Oh,
need y'all
wow.
to go out and repaint the stripes on the parking lot. And so, we were so mad. I mean, we were just livid. And we're like, we're in the Army. What are we doing? So we're out there painting stripes, doing our thing. And after a couple of days of that, Captain Garland Payne comes and he says, hey, y'all want to do this your whole life? And we're like, well, no. And he goes, well, you're not really qualified the way I see it to do anything else. You might want to go to college. And he said, if you'll go sign up for college classes, I'll let you off this detail.
Oh, wow.
And at the time we were angry about that. And I did not realize what a passion for learning I had. And I wouldn't have realized that, I don't think, had he not seen something in me. And, in the Army, you can do things like that to get to somebody. I don't know that I have that same tool or would use something like that nowadays, but it got to me. And it was something that I realized, like I said, years and years later, that really was the start of something cool. And ultimately started going to night school, started getting, a lot of college up under my belt. And then had an officer recruiter come up to me and say, hey, we've got this great opportunity for those in your situation who want to be a nurse. So the Army packaged me up, sent me off to nursing school. And it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's been truly found my passion in life. It really aligned well.
Your time in the military, what were some of the challenges that you had to work through? And then how did you navigate and become successful ultimately? Some of the biggest challenges that you had to face?
Yeah. So, there's a couple of individuals that, I could name for probably 30 minutes that talk about the things they did for 30 minutes that, I take a look at my first hospital chief nurse. He took me aside and he said, hey, here's the thing. Never quit learning. Any learning opportunity comes up, you're taking advantage of it. Be first in, last out. All the things that I think you tell as a military officer, you tell just about everybody new coming into your unit, right?
Yeah.
But then he said two things that I tell people to this day. He said, number one, no matter what job you're in, at some point you walk out the door and don't come back. You retire, you change units. And he said, the thing you walk out this door with is your family. He said, so take care of your family and they'll take care of you. Yeah. And I have goosebumps right now because I remember where I was standing when he told me that.
Oh, wow.
And then the second thing he told me, he said, hey, in healthcare, there's a lot of tough decisions coming your way. Yeah. And he said, always put the patient first. That's why you're here. That's what we do. And as long as you put the patient first, the rest of it will work out. He said, err on the side of the patient and you're going to be fine. And those are two things to this day I tell just about everybody that I interact with.
My wife is a nurse, and I know the level of servanthood that has to go along with that. Because being a nurse, and I can say this just from some of the times that my wife, she's going to get mad at me, but I'll say it anyway. When we were stationed out at Fort Lewis, Washington, she would come home, at midnight and just be crying because her job was so stressful throughout the day. People just saying horrible things, her working on the psych ward with people with mental disabilities and just being completely exhausted. And the amount of love and compassion that you have to give to those people is the truest definition, I believe, of being a servant leader. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, but it was definitely highlighted during COVID. And I think that now more than ever, there's a balance that has to be maintained in the healthcare industry, at least from my perspective, of not losing sight of the patient. The patient is
Right.
first, of
Absolutely.
how you just said that. And I'm really curious, how did COVID, and I know we're kind of getting off topic of
No,
your
no, we're
life,
good.
but
Yeah.
how did COVID impact the healthcare industry from your side?
Well, I mean, I can talk about nurses. I mean, you just can't talk about COVID without talking about the impact to your point.
Yeah.
Individuals who worked late, came in lots of extra shifts. The first part of this was scary. We didn't know what this thing was, right? We
Mm,
didn't know how it spread. We didn't know how to contain it, but they came to work every day,
yeah.
and it's just something that I look back now, and um, incredibly challenging time, cannot be understated. Um, but I just look back, and unfortunately, right now, like healthcare heroes has almost become a cliche.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, if you put yourself back in those moments, that was real. And I mean, and it was really about individuals wouldn't go home to their families because they didn't want to transmit whatever this was to
Yeah.
their spouses, but the dedication to the patients was like, I mean, nothing you could imagine. Is every day showing up, being there for the patients. The Everything changed so fast, but it didn't deter them. We had a lot of nurses leave, a lot of nurses enter. I mean, it's just been this dynamic environment. But what has happened since, I think, has opened up just a ton of opportunity. And so we
Mm,
came through this period where we kind of had to hit the reset button for lots of reasons. But now we see a lot of innovation in the industry. We're seeing
mm,
some telehealth. We're seeing robots in our hospitals. We're seeing changes in the way we document, so to take some of the workload off the nurse. We're seeing advancements in some of the admin functions. We're seeing advancements in what we do with our leaders and how we develop them. So really, right now, I think the potential in the environment is amazing. And that's what I'm excited about, because now what you're seeing is nurses are actually driving some of that innovation, where I don't know that we drove as much as we did prior,
mm.
but now that voice is elevated, and it really is. And I tell everybody this all the time. I don't have any good ideas, but there's 12,000 individuals out there that have a lot of
Yeah.
great ideas. And so we just got to listen to them and really harvest those things and figure out how to make it happen. Right. So,
That is a beautiful point, and I really want to make sure that that gets highlighted. As a leader of an organization, you don't have the best ideas. You just don't,
you
because
don't.
you're not seeing the problem from the tactical level in the trenches, in the foxhole. You're seeing it from more of an aerial perspective, like where I work right now for the Army, cost, schedule, and performance. And everything that I look at is through the lens of cost, schedule, and performance. How is this going to impact the cost? How is this going to impact the schedule? How is this going to impact the performance? But what we don't look at is, how is this going to impact the soldier, this thing that I'm building, who has to actually use it when the bullets are snapping by their head? How is it going to impact the soldier? And I
Right.
think that it's absolutely critical to not farm, because that's probably a bad word, but to have a culture that is safe enough where constructive candor can foster, and people can come
Right.
to you regardless of their rank or their title with ideas like, hey, sir, I know we do this system for filing patients or information or whatever it is, but
Mhm.
there's this new innovative practice that I saw at another hospital that I think could save us time. That's awesome. Let's look into that. But
Right.
how do you foster that kind of culture within the healthcare?
So, it really is about, your strategy has to be informed by your environment. Right.
Mm,
And so you take a look at the organization you work for. There are just basic things that the organization is going to bring to the table. So, at Memorial Hermann, where I work now, we're really looking at, how we define wellness. Well, wellness is more
mm,
than I need to take a break. and I'm having a hard day, so I need to take 15 minutes and take a break and have a nice space to go do that. It's about your financial health. It's about having access to counselors 24/7. It's about weight loss. It's about a lot of different things that I don't know that we paid a lot of attention to in the past. And in fact, some of these things, like with mental health, we didn't want to talk about those, right? Because
Yeah.
as professionals, holy moly, you can't put that on the table because something bad might happen to me professionally. So you keep it in, and it makes it worse. Where we have
Talk about.
effective ways to deal with it and work with it, and it doesn't make you less of a person. It makes you human, and so it's okay to talk about it. And so you have that baseline, like here's the organization and the commitment to the community and all that, but then you've got to elevate the voice of the individuals, like you're talking about. And we really talk about, nurses want to grow in their skill and talent. Nurses want to be a part of reimagining the environment they work in, and they want to excel. They want to be the best at what they do at any given time. Nobody wants to come into the hospital and leave with something they shouldn't have, right? Like an illness or an infection or something like that. And nurses, you look through COVID to now, they want to be the best at what they do, get you healthy, get you back on the road, take care of your biopsychosocial needs.
Hmm.
And so it's listening to, that's a big bucket and that's a big challenge, right? But if you leverage the voice of the nurse through rounding, talking to your people, we have 8 magnet designated facilities, and that's all about elevating through our committee structures where we have staff led committees who are able to elevate the concerns from their unit all the way up to their facilities. And
Boom.
now we're putting in place across our 17 hospitals, putting in place what we're calling a shared Congress. So now each of the representatives can come from their facility and bring the things that's most important to them. Then we can prioritize that as a system so we can act on it. So a lot of surveying, a lot of work by leaders, but it's energy that is well spent.
I love that. That is the best way to grow an organization, is to create that kind of buy-in from your team. If people say something but it's not actually implemented or at least looked at, then you're going to lose them. So you asking your team, outside of your hospital, and bringing those thoughts to the table, and then kind of weighing them, which ones has the most impact now, and where should we align our tools, is absolutely beautiful. And there was something else that you said that kind of touched a vein, and with me being in the military, us both being in the military, mental health. And there's a quote, and I don't know who to attribute to, but it's kind of always stuck with me: is it takes strength to ask for help. It takes courage to seek support. And when I first joined the military, mental health was something that you never wanted to touch with a 10-foot pole. And
Right.
like, if you go see behavioral health, it's because you're getting chaptered out of the army, or you- you're just not a fit soldier. And then I went on a combat deployment, and I've seen actual the negative side effects of PTSD and what it can do to soldiers, not just temporarily trying to commit suicide, successfully committing suicide, but the
Right.
negative impacts that it can have over their life. And that is a battle that we have to learn to win, and then understand that it's not just a temporary thing. It comes in waves, and it comes in traumatic events like COVID in the healthcare profession that probably created some type of PTSD. I know with my wife and my
Yeah.
son having asthma, everything got wiped down that first couple months with Lysol wipes,
Right.
groceries. She wouldn't let me go out and get groceries because she's like, I know you're not going to wash your hands, so I'm going to go do it all. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to complain if I don't have to go grocery shopping. So I'd love to kind of transition it back to you getting out of the military and then going and working for a for-profit organization, and then a government organization, and a nonprofit. How are those different, and what were some of the challenges that you had to navigate through those?
Yeah, it's so funny because when I got to the point where I was retiring, I don't know that I was 100% ready.
Yeah.
But life happens. And my wife had like 4 surgeries. I had
Mm,
a toddler, I think they were at the time 2 or 3. And there was just a lot going on in that space, right? And so I had my next assignment kind of where I wanted to go, what I was pushing for. You know how that
yeah.
works as far as you position yourself well. And it just really came down to a lot of soul searching. And so I did go ahead and exit, but I wanted to stay connected to veterans and soldiers in any way I could. So I transitioned to the VA. And
Mm,
so I was with the VA for 10 years. Started off in the ambulatory care footprint, went to the CNO, ACNO, or ACNO, CNO in that system, and absolutely loved it. I mean, I've got nothing but great things to say about that healthcare delivery system. Don't believe everything you hear in the press. I'm telling you firsthand. But then opportunity came to go to HCA, and spent 4 years there. Went to their corporate office and went to a division nursing leadership role. Had hospitals in 3 different states there, and lo and behold, a position that I didn't even see coming in, ever opened up at Memorial Hermann for the same role, but here in Texas, and
mm,
with an organization that I knew their reputation well. When I was in the VA, I was just 2 hours up north here. So when that position came open, and it's probably the only thing that could have dynamited me out of where I was.
mm.
And Lord took care of me and opened the doors for me. It's been a great fit. I just love the mission of what we do. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars back into the community. We're looking at how do we open doors for individuals who want healthcare as a career? How do we provide care in school-based health clinics that it just comes right out of our core dollars?
Mhm.
It's really a mission that I have been so happy to be a part of, and help to grow that mission. And that's one of those things I'm very passionate about.
That's amazing. So, no, one thing you've talked about, and I don't understand it from the lens of that I haven't walked through those steps yet, but kind of working in VA hospitals, and you always look on the news that everything's so bad with that healthcare system. What, from your standpoint, are the challenges? And then with a brand new service member just getting out, what advice would you give them to kind of navigate the VA system?
Yeah, so I tell everybody, you really should take advantage of your VA benefits.
Mm,
They have an amazing prescription benefits. If you have anything service connected, that's not out of your pocket. And then if you ever need long term care, there's just nothing. It's nothing that comes close to that. So now, in all fairness, it is a little bit harder to navigate than going into to a
yeah.
system. So you have to learn how to work with the system, and you have to be patient in that aspect. But once you kind of get in with a provider, which can be a challenge, but once you get into a provider, you maintain your appointments. At that point, it gets a lot easier to navigate.
Mm. Yeah, that's one thing that I guess I'm not looking forward to when I retire, but that is great advice. So you talked about kind of mission alignment in the healthcare, and that's one reason that you went down the path you did for the nonprofit and the profit companies. How is that so critical within the organization that you're currently working for?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you really get to a point in your career where you can kind of really choose what you want to do at that point.
Mm,
And when this opportunity came up, it's a couple of things. I have the privilege of working with just some amazing chief nurse officers, some CEOs that are just out of this world, and our company leadership, from our president to our COO, just really dedicated to how do we invest in the communities that we live in.
mm,
What are the things that we can do to remove barriers? Because if you stop and think about, I don't know if we're the largest. If we're not the largest, we're one of the largest employers in Houston. And so if you think of the potential that we have, we want to drive, we want to be the ones that are resetting the norms as far as, how do I get out of high school and get into a healthcare as a career? How do I walk out of a high school and say, I want to get a job in that big building when I don't even know what those jobs are? And
Yeah.
so, how do we work within our communities and our high schools and those who are wanting second careers? How do we remove barriers to employment? Then, how do we pay for their school so they can achieve? I tell everybody, I want everybody to be a nurse right now. We need lots of them. But if
Yeah.
you choose not to, we're okay with that too. I'd be remiss as the chief nurse if I didn't say that, right?
Yeah.
But we do need lots of specialties. It's not just all about nursing. But yeah, it really is about, and we're doing it. I mean, we're partnering with um, community colleges, high schools, four-year universities. We're looking at how do you get credit while you're at work? So I can be at work and going to school at the same time. I can park in one parking place and go to school and work. And so we're delivering on those things, and that's what I find incredibly exciting. And we got amazing leaders who rally around that. And we want to give somebody more than a living wage so they can return to their communities, and that ultimately impacts their community on a level that you just can't do if you don't invest like that.
I love that model, and I don't think I've had anyone on my show that's kind of to talk that talks about that. Being in Huntsville right now, and I see it all the time because this is the home of NASA, missiles in space, PEO aviation, all these really cool STEM related programs. And those programs like BAE, Lockheed Martin, what they do is they grow talent with STEM backgrounds in all the way from grade school in this area and build that and foster it to the point where they'll pay for their school, and then they already have a job when they're lined up, and then it continues to kind of invest back into the community. But I think that is one of the key essential elements. We always talk about taking care of our people, but we forget to look at the whole person holistically. Well, taking care of your hospital, taking care of your people means taking care of your community. And if you want to take care of your community, then you have to be able to give them the resources and the tools. And I love how you talked about removing the barriers. So people who maybe did not have the best upbringing or the most resources can go pursue the things that they're passionate about. Because I've
Right.
often seen that some of the most passionate leaders in my life had some of the hardest upbringings and childhoods. And I'll share this story with you is that when I took over my platoon in Afghanistan, they deployed with 44, but there were only 28 soldiers when I actually took over due to some issues, combat loss. We needed actual soldiers to operate. The three soldiers who volunteered to come to our platoon, which was still basically getting in firefights almost every single day, did it because they wanted to get away from their platoon and get a fresh start. And those platoons were excited to get rid of those people. They were the best soldiers that I had in the platoon, hands down, because I told them, like, all I need to know about you is that you volunteered to come here knowing how dangerous this work is. And I gave them a chance and they shined. So that's amazing. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it really is. It's something that you know not everybody's cut out of coming out of high school. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I have a incredibly non-traditional all the way through my doctorate degree. I did almost
Wow.
all of it night school. And
That's
so
crazy. That's incredible.
and so I look back and I think, there's a couple of points in my career. We talked about a few of them where somebody really invested in me and, to your point, believed in me,
Yeah.
gave me options. And then, I mean, you can go anywhere you want to go. I mean, especially when somebody believes in you, right? And so it really is. So it's bigger than just aligning the opportunity, because a challenge we have in healthcare that we're working to address is it is really hard to have an 18-year-old walk on a healthcare unit and then be independent.
Mm.
Right. And so that's a unique challenge. So you've got to think about your environment a little bit differently than, hey, here's your first day of work, charge on. So how do we develop some training courses and mentors,
Mm.
and you really have to, you got to take a side and say, hey, you can't talk like that at work. And And it's amazing to me how some individuals have never had somebody in their lives just say that and just take them under their wing and say, hey, here's what we got to do. You know, in the military, you get that. You get the here's how you dress, here's how you walk, here's how you,
Yeah.
but it's a unique environment, right? That doesn't exist outside of somebody in your family who cares about you saying, hey, brush your hair, right? And we're losing that, I think. And so that's where I think that we have the opportunity in all professions to really think about what we're doing a little bit differently, because what we do know now, we have work shortages everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so we can't do the same thing we're doing now and just do it better. That doesn't even make any sense.
I think that really sums down to nowadays people forgot to lead themselves, I guess, if that makes sense. One of the first lessons that I've learned is that if you're going to lead a team or an organization, you have to first learn to lead yourself. And I think being a nurse, kind of what you're talking about, self care is vitally important, because if you don't have the ability to recharge your batteries and basically be a battery, then you're not going to go into work and you're not going to give the energy needed to the organization, to the patients, to the
Right.
people, and to everyone around you. So you got to figure out how to kind of balance that workload and your level of maturity too. That 18-year-old may get off work and go play Call of Duty all night. I know I did that in college until like 4 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
and then go back into work that day. But you have to learn to lead yourself if you're going to
We do.
have extraordinary results. And I'll never forget every single weekend when I would do my safety briefs when I was a company commander, I would always talk about, hey, no one cares the badges you have on your uniform, your rank. No one cares about you. You're an infantryman. No one cares about that. You are a profession of arms in a professional organization, and you are a professional soldier. And there's only so many professions that society has ever known. So when you don't wear the uniform and you're going out there on the weekend, always have that in the back of your mind. So when you're making decisions, are you doing it as a professional? And I'm hoping that that prevented some SIRs or serious incident reports, but I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, and what's important too is as you're looking at, you know, how you're building your career pathways, you got to make sure you're taking care of all levels, right?
Mm,
Because you have rock star individuals who are on your units now as nurses who may want to get a master's degree or a
mm,
doctorate, go into research, you know, go from med surge over into mother baby or into the neonatal intensive care units. And so it really is about the full spectrum, about how do we align these resources so that people can go where they want to go. Because that's one of the things that, you know, I found as you kind of exit the military into an environment that's, you know, not the military, it's you know, people have a lot more choices, right? And you have a incredibly diverse workforce, especially in healthcare, who really can move, especially nowadays, with days' notice. You know, COVID has made an environment that it's very easy to go from one job to another, and we're all working with this limited talent pool. And so it really is about delivering on, getting back to the voice of the individuals you lead. It's delivering on that voice, and it's okay if you try something and it doesn't work.
yeah.
I mean, and that's the part we don't do well. We're very good about, hey, we did this and it was, you know, lights out. We don't necessarily do as well when we're saying, hey, we tried this and it was terrible. We learned something and we're going to try again,
Yeah.
but we don't do that part well. And I am coming, again, I don't know if it's with age or just experience, but I'm coming to find that message is as important as when you have those big wins.
How do you kind of walk through that? So when you try something and you fail, how do you learn as an organization and then still try that, but alter it, pivot, do whatever, but to continue to move forward? How do you work through that as a healthcare?
Yeah, so you know, it's again when you're in healthcare, you're dealing with humans, so your margin
Yeah.
of error is incredibly slim, right?
Yeah.
And so it really is about having the right people at the table. And so having your multiple disciplines looking at, if we're looking at a practice change or a policy or a new piece of equipment, making sure that you have the individuals that really know what they're doing at the
Mm,
table, and you've got to encourage them to speak up, right? I mean, it's like, hey, you know, we're here to do the right thing. We don't want to hurt somebody. So how do we do whatever it is we're going to do it in the safest manner possible? And what are those key milestones that we've got to hit to make sure that we are
mm,
doing? How do we measure it? You've got to set your measures on the front end and then have some structure around that so you do know if it worked or not. Because that's the problem. You can do some pretty cool stuff, and at the end of it, you don't know if it worked or not.
yeah.
So having that construct on the front end so that when you do get through on the back end, do you want to invest $1 million because you can save two, in the long run? Those are all the types of things that it's very important. And not everything works. There's a lot of bright, shiny objects out
Yep.
there. And you gotta get your hands on those and get them off pretty quick, right? And that's got to be okay.
Yeah, that's and in the military, we always go through the after action review process. So what were we supposed to do? What did we do? And then how can we improve? And but having those data points or milestones or anchor points along the way, or rallying points, if you will, is
Right.
absolutely critical, because you're knowing if you make progress, if you're getting to those milestones, and if you're not getting those milestones, you're just floundering. But having the ability to learn from your mistakes is the difference between quitting and failing. So failing's not a bad thing. Quitting is. If you quit something,
Right.
then you have lost. In that moment in time when you decide, I'm not going to try this anymore, I'm done. It's like podcasting. The first one that I did was absolutely horrible, but I had the unreasonableness about me that I'm going to continue and I'm going to try to get better. But leadership, and I'm reading the book right now by Brene Brown, Dare,
Dare to
Daring,
lead.
Dare to Lead.
Hmm.
That's all about being a daring leader. And it goes back to a Theodore Roosevelt quote of being the man in the arena. You have to be in the arena because that's where all the battles are fought. But you have to learn how to understand the mistakes that you made, and figure out how to mitigate that risk and then continue moving forward. That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And not be afraid to be authentic, right? If you're scared, it's okay to say that, and it's okay to say, we're going to lean forward. We're going to do this together. Absolutely.
So kind of walk me through, where you're currently at right now at Memorial Hermann Health Systems.
Yeah. So I'm the chief nurse for the system. So we have about 30,000 employees.
Wow.
About 12,000 of them are nurses, 17 hospitals. We're in the greater Houston area. And if you're not familiar with the greater Houston area, it is quite sizable. I don't know, we're probably like third largest city in the U.S. Landmass wise. I think it's the largest city. So yeah, you could spend 2 hours driving here and still be in the greater Houston metro. So yeah, so I've been in this job about a year now, and I just can't imagine being anywhere else. It's just been an amazing experience for me.
How is Memorial Hermann kind of improving healthcare?
So in lots of ways, we are actually taking on the value equation, which
Mm,
you hear a lot about value in healthcare and the expense of healthcare, and we are actively taking a look at how do we do things to make healthcare more accessible, less expensive, safer, more efficient. Really taking on that value proposition, and looking at how do we interact differently with payers. So hopefully that helps your premiums come down as we solve some of these issues, and really taking that on, and also working on being leaders in quality in just about all aspects.
I know you talked about this before, and it's absolutely critical. And you have an employee base of 30,000 people. That's really inspiring to think about, but it's daunting in a way of how do you hire the right person for the job, and then how do you coach, train, and mentor them to apply those skills without causing burnout. So kind of walk me through the systems that you have for maybe onboarding someone, and then how do you train them for the job?
Yeah, so again, this is something that I don't think we paid much attention to
Yeah.
prior to COVID. It was, you just you just work until one day you can't work anymore and you walk out the
Yep.
door, and we just kind
You're
of
done.
chalk that up. Yeah, we just kind of chalk that up to, well, we just need another leader, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, terrible way to do business, by the way. So, so yeah, really, it really is taking a look at being individualistic. So
Mm.
it's probably the easiest for me to talk about a new graduate nurse,
Yeah.
right? So I've been in nursing school for 2 years, done my clinical rotations. And then after I take a test, I'm licensed and can be independent.
Mm.
And if you take a look at everything that individual needs to know, from how to administer meds safely, to being able to recognize somebody who's decompensating, to how do we, escalate things, whether it be a baby who's having a bad heart rate, or a mom who's not having the right outcomes, maybe too much blood loss. There's so much in that space to learn. You really have to be intentional about, number one, assessing the individual to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are,
Mm.
making sure that you align the training program. So, I mean, you don't need to spend as much time on the things they're strong in. We need to
Yeah.
spend an inordinate amount of time building them up in the things they're not. And then at the same time, making sure that you do come around on a routine basis to make sure that you are touching those things that are low volume and high risk. Those are the things that you see twice a year. Well, if you only see it twice a year, you got
Mm.
to stop and think, if you don't practice that skill, you don't want to be seeing that in the moment where you have a human in front of you that you need to do something with, and you need to do the right thing. But the great thing about it is, it's the teamwork. That's the one thing I love about nursing, that I've really enjoyed from the military, is there is a sense of camaraderie. There's a sense of
Yeah.
teamwork. There's a sense of, hey, we're all in this together. We're going to pull together. We're going to do the best thing for the patient. And so that's where you wrap, less experience with more experienced nurses, and make sure that you have that mix on the unit, so that you do have that support structure. And we're looking at really cool things right now with, if you don't have that, how do we use, these telepresence robots, and how do we use things like how can I reach out, even if it's on my iPhone, how can I reach out and ask somebody a question? All of those things are pretty exciting, and we're starting to figure out how to use them. It's like any new technology; it just
Yeah.
takes forever to figure it out, but we're getting there, and we're doing some pretty cool things with it. So, yeah, all of those really kind of align with what you're talking about.
I think embracing those new innovative technologies, especially now with AI coming out and having all these different tools at your disposal. That's all they are. They're just tools at your disposal to become a better steward of your profession. And I remember, like, just recently this happened where my wife was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We had no clue what was going on, but it blew me away by how quickly she was able to get a response from her nurse using the Army's portal at the time, Genesis, having basically a text message back and forth to a healthcare provider, giving them labs in real time, being able to see her labs as they came in, and her being a nurse going in the rabbit hole of all the things that it could happen. And then it finally, 2 weeks in, she was basically able to get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes because she had certain types of antibodies that a normal type 2 diabetic wouldn't have. But
Mm.
if you go back 10 years, someone goes in ketoacidosis, and then hey, you have type 2 diabetes, and you get treated with, insulin or whatever it is. But with her having such a pinpointed diagnosis in such a short period of time, and then being able to manage it all within a period of a month, was absolutely incredible. And this was also in a very stressful time where we're getting ready to move our family from one duty station to a next. And that's why life's not going to stop.
Right.
So if you can find a way to optimize healthcare, and again, going back to one of the themes here of putting the patient first, well, technology, innovative ways of doing that, investing in people, hiring the right people, coaching and training those people, and ensuring they don't have burnout at the end of the day, is putting the patient first, because you're being a steward of your profession. And I love that. I kind of would love to go to where you are right now, your passion and your purpose, What drives you every day in your job?
So what drives me? I just love investing in individuals.
Mm,
It's it's one of the things that I am very purposeful about. So I get up in the morning, kind of have this conversation, with God as kind of align my day, and then I look at my calendar and kind of do a dress rehearsal of you know meeting to meeting to meeting. It seems like, but do kind of a dress rehearsal. But I try to be purposeful about, say that there's some tension with a situation or an individual. I try to be purposeful about thinking, okay, here is how I'm going to address this individual or that situation today, because my intent, the world is a tough place, right? It doesn't have to be that at work. But I think if we're not willing to be vulnerable and have, some conversations and lift each other up and smile and, have a sense of humor and do some of those things, then it is going to be a tough place at work. Right. And
yeah.
so that's one of the things I try to do is I really sit down in the morning and just take a look at my day, do the dress rehearsal and kind of pinpoint a couple times in the day. Um, I'm not saying it's 100% successful, right? Some things go off the rocker, and that's just part of the being a human. But I really try to be intentional about that, because this life is short, man.
It kind of goes down to the quote that I have that I use all the time: that every day is a gift. You're never going. Don't waste yours. And it kind of comes back to that. Some of the most traumatic experiences in my life really bounded that down. Is that today's a gift, and I think you and I start the day with the same way. I start off with the Lord's Prayer, and then ask Him to use me as a vessel, to allow me to live my life intended as I should, with His purpose in mind. And that's how I start every one of my mornings. But I love how you talked about being purposeful, finding friction points that is naturally going to happen in that day, and then already kind of playing through, how am I going to work through this scenario? How am I going to be, the true, authentic, vulnerable leader that I am? And then being able to work through those, because if you don't create a safe environment at work, and that's such a great point, you're not going to get the optimal amount of work from your team. You're going to get subpar work. So you have to be able to create a safe space. So I love that advice. So last question before we get to the final show
Sure.
segment. What advice would you give to an aspiring healthcare professional who is just starting out in the field?
I would say two things. Never stop learning, because you can't in
Mm,
healthcare. I mean, it is one of those things that I find exhilarating, because it does change all the time. The demands change, and as you change levels of leadership, there's also opportunity there. So never stop learning, and that's the investment of yourself piece. And then the second thing I would say is, just don't take yourself so seriously. I
mm.
mean, I
Yeah.
wish I'd have figured that out so much younger. I had our chief of staff, right after I had gotten out of the military. He took me aside and he said, "Hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm just going to tell you, uh, you don't you don't have to be such a jerk." And I was like, I'm being a jerk. I'm like, and it really caught me by surprise. And so it really made me think differently about, wow, I mean, because I had kind of taken some of those things that I had in the military as very exacting, giving people like the op order and, that kind of
Yeah.
get it, very outcome driven and that kind of thing. I'll tell you, if he hadn't done that, and so it's funny, because I sat down and did an action plan on how I'm not going to be a jerk. And then I looked at that and I said, that's exactly what somebody who is not being a nice guy would do. And so I've really had to put a lot of energy into listening to feedback from those around me. And I really cherish those who are willing to take me aside and say, hey, do you ever stop and think about how that was perceived? There's a book, it's called The Last Lecture.
Mm,
I believe his last name is Posh, who wrote it, and it's in it. Then there's a part in it where he talks about, you have to have a Dutch uncle in your life, and I didn't even know what that was till I read the book. but it's somebody who's not afraid to hurt your feelings. They're just going to tell
Ah,
you the truth and not worry about that because they love you. I mean,
yeah.
they're giving you the truth because they want you to be better. And so, yeah, just don't take yourself so serious. Invest in those around you,
Mm.
and you're going to be fine.
Those are the two biggest themes that I got from this episode. Is one, invest in others. And I think with you, Brian, is that people invested in you so early in life, and then now you're investing in others because you have that passion and purpose. And then number two, chasing hard things. Throughout this whole episode, what I've seen is a theme of you continuously pushing yourself and growing and growing and growing and growing. And as it so, you gain more responsibility and more influence, but you continue to be a servant leader at heart, which is absolutely amazing and inspiring. To me, that is the definition of leadership: to inspire people to do more, become more. And you are doing that. What I'd love to do is finish the final show segment. I call it the killer bees. I'm an infantryman, so I have to say kill somewhere there, right?
All
So
right.
be brief, be brilliant, be present, and then be gone. So the first question, if you're ready,
Yeah, let's do it.
what do you believe separates a great leader from an extraordinary leader?
The one who's willing to shield those that he leads from the heat.
I love that. Question two, what is one resource that you could recommend to our listeners?
So, it's just interesting. We did like our favorite books, Lincoln on Leadership, and that Brene Brown book, Dare to Lead,
Yeah.
and the last lecture, and Make Your Bed. Can't leave Make Your Bed off.
Yep. That all great books. It's funny. I'm breaking my rules right now, but we're getting ready to drive across country, and I have a backpack full of books. And my wife is like, "Why do you have that many books?" So I was like, "Well, I have to read." All right. So question three: if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that's what I'd mentioned earlier. It's just don't take yourself so serious. Work hard, do the right thing,
Yeah.
and mind your family.
So last question: how can our listeners find you, and how can they add value to you?
So it's easy to find me. It's LinkedIn is kind of the most popular at this point. If somebody's looking to reach out, and one of the things that I feel that we hadn't talked on today is as individuals are transitioning out of the military, those who are in healthcare, looking for healthcare as a career. One of the things we're really trying to do is how do we open that door in our
Mm,
organization? So many other organizations are doing that too. But I just think it's if we're talking about adding value, there really is for veterans who are getting out, we really need to keep that bond going. And I say that
yeah.
whether it's me or somebody else who's been in the military, touch base, because you really lose that. We talk about suicide and
Yeah.
healthcare and behavioral health and all that. You lose that bond. So make an effort to keep that going. And whether it's joining whether you ride motorcycles or the VFW or whatever it is, I think those things are very important.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I believe that people get out of the military and they lose that sense of fulfillment, and then that's when the darkness kind of creeps in. So
It
yep,
does.
that's absolutely amazing, Brian. This has been one of my favorite episodes, and I was telling you before, I'm not going to be able to record another episode until September, so I think it's going to hold me over until then. But thank you so much for being intentional with me for the past hour, talking about something that I love, which is leadership, and continue to be an inspiring leader, being a purposeful, accountable leader. And thank you for everything that you do.
Hey, thank you for what you're doing, Josh. It's pretty amazing you're able to hold down, being active duty and do something like this, and it's that is adding value. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it, brother. Have a great night.
Thank you.